And welcome to another edition of the Injury Report. Steve Politziner, ESPN West Palm, and Dr. John Cutler, South Florida Foot and Ankle Centers. And John, today we have on my favorite guest. No one. It's just a chance for you and me to talk.
Wow, here we go again. It sounds fun. I always enjoy doing it. Sometimes it takes up some of the air time when we bring someone else on. So now I get you and me. Let's go.
Yeah, I mean, we've had you bring in so many talented and intelligent leaders, pioneers in the medical industry, but you're not so shabby yourself. Quite a pedigree. Johns Hopkins trained, 20 plus years in the Palm Beaches. How many surgeries would you estimate that you have performed? I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but just how many surgeries would you estimate that you have performed on the foot, on the ankle, in the last 20 plus years that you've had your very successful practice?
I don't know if there's such a number. It would have to be in the 8 to 14,000 number.
Nice. At least you got to 8 to 14.
Yeah, it's a lot. We've been fortunate to be here, a great place to practice. We get to see a lot of diverse community in Palm Beach. Usually you think about sometimes the foot doctor is usually treating, especially in South Florida, you're treating all the old community, the geriatric community, which we do and enjoy doing. But we've been fortunate to treat the sports community, to treat the young kids here. The average age of our patient, we did a census of it approximately a year ago, and we got to be 37 years old. That was the average age of our person, most of our patients. So we've had a great time doing that. I've had a great time working on ESPN with all you guys too. It's been great. We've had a fun time doing the Fantasy Report with Josh Cohn. Real professional, real great, awesome. Was here with Evan the other day. That was a fun time. So I appreciate everything that I have the opportunity to do with you and your professional staff that you have here.
And well, thank you, John. And this is not the end. This is only the beginning, because there are a lot of really exciting things for John, Dr. Cutler, and South Florida Foot and Ankle that hope we will be sharing with you as we continue on ESPN West Palm. But today it is the Injury Report here at ESPNWestPalm.com. And John, with your expertise being feet and being ankles, we look around at what are some of the biggest injuries. We ask around, we poll. And a lot of them, people come back with a couple of specific things that I think would be great for you to expand on a little bit today. Everything from what are they, preventative measures, ongoing treatment, etc. And I think the first and foremost one is plantar fasciitis, which unfortunately I've experienced firsthand. But plantar fasciitis, we've heard about it so much on the court, with athletes, and it seems to be a growing concern off the court as well with weekend warriors such as ourselves.
Right. It's one out of four patients who come to my office has it. So if we see 80 patients a day, 20 people are coming in with plantar fasciitis. I've had it. You've had it. It's a very common down here. One of the reasons it happens is you're coming down to South Florida from up north. You switch from a carpet to a hard floor. You switch from being more active to being sedentary. Sedentary up north, more active down here in South Florida. So you're using your foot more. You're using the heel more. The causes. Let's talk about the causes, Steve. Very debatable what the actual cause is. One is that we pronate when we hit on the outside and we roll extra. By rolling that extra, we're taking that fascia. Let's talk about that first even. The fascia is a ligament that starts on the heel and goes through the arch all the way to the toes. So it encompasses that whole bottom of the foot. And right where it inserts on the heel, it tears little microfibers there. As we get older, we don't have that flexibility. The tendons aren't as flexible. They don't have the elasticity. So they end up tearing. The extra pronation causes that tear to happen. And that's what causes that plantar fasciitis. It's that first step in the morning, getting out of bed, the first step after sitting and getting out of the car. All those are some of the symptoms that we see quite commonly. The treatments involved in it are various. Usually to get you better quickly, a cortisone injection we employ, followed by inserts orthotics to stop that pronation, to give you support. So we have a concept that we do two different things. We want to treat you medically to get you feeling better, get you back going, as well as biomechanically to stop that extra forces rolling in on it. So the plantar fascia is caused by those extra forces, and we treat them by preventing those extra forces. So again, common thing that we treat, do well with treating it. Rarely do we end up doing surgery on it. surgery would be we'd cut that fascia to lengthen it. That's the rare thing. Couple things we do before that, the injections, the orthotics we talked about. Sometimes physical therapy, tough for people to get a physical therapist 3 times a week. We need your schedule to be able to do that.
You're right.
The average person can't do that. So tough to do that.
What about preventative in the first place? You mentioned people move down here. I think you're really talking to a lot of people who aren't as accustomed to walking around barefoot, walking around on hard tile, and it's really interesting. I was told that same thing actually by you months ago, that it takes a long time to adjust to walking around, or if you walk around barefoot. And that was one of the first questions you asked me: do you walk around barefoot a lot, and do you have tile? And it was yes and yes. What can we do? It's not like you go to the gym and you lift some bicep curls. Are there things that we can do to strengthen the area?
Definitely. I mean, one of the biggest things we talk about is stretching, because we talk about that fascia getting tight and being pulled. Well, if we stretch it, we use night splints. So people sleep with a night splint. Now, I personally couldn't sleep with anything on my foot, let alone a night splint, let alone a cover. But to have something there stretching for 9 hours, I couldn't do, but a lot of patients can. And if you can't do it for 9 hours, you do it at night for about 3 to 4, just while you're sitting there watching TV, watching a game. You give that stretch, and that really does wonders for you. Icing it, stretching it with a water bottle is another thing that we use. Very successful with that as well. So it's preventative as before you get it, Steve. I guess the answer would be no, because not everyone fractures their ankle. So we don't try to prevent that fracture of the ankle, but once you do it, we try to prevent you from refracturing.
Right.
Same thing with plantar fascia. We don't prevent it. A lot of people can walk on tile floors and never have a problem. Unfortunately, once you do have it, now we got to talk about so that doesn't happen again.
And once it's over, is it over?
Oh no.
Or is it more apt to come back?
100%.
Okay.
Once we
So
find
unlike a break that might heal and you could even recover stronger than
Right.
previously, you are forever, to some extent, impacted.
it can always come back. And once you have it, then you have to do the preventative things, the stretching, the icing, wearing shoes, cushioned shoes on the hard floors, wearing orthotics to prevent that pronation that we talked about. Those types of things.
All right, so something we're all going to have to keep a watch on. You have turf toe. Turf toe is a name that you hear a lot about in sports, and you think about these big strapping athletes, and they have a toe that is preventing them from playing, or it's nagging for a whole season long. Tell us a little bit more about turf toe, and this goes all the way down to kids now too who are participating in sports.
Curious, I have a question for you, because the average medical doctor doesn't know what it is. And I'm saying the layperson, what does the layperson think about turf toe?
My impression of turf toe is that it is a jammed toe that just doesn't want to unjam, and it's the kind of thing you just gotta, I guess, give it time. Unlike like a separated shoulder or something that maybe you could put back into place.
You did better than most doctors. That's actually right. So, is that?
Well, I've been in medical school here on the injury report the last year.
There you go. Turf toe basically refers to where you hear it a lot on the AstroTurf, all right, because it's such a hard surface that when your toe comes down, you hyperextend it, you push it down, and the forces push it back up. So you strain all the ligaments surrounding the ball of the big joint. Not actually the toe itself, not the nail, but just the joint where the bunion would form, that big toe joint. There's 7 ligaments inside that joint, plus 2 tendons inside of a bone called sesamoids. There's a whole apparatus there with a lot of little ligaments. And if you pull too much, you strain that ligament. Really, turf toe is strained ligaments. And just like we've talked about we've talked about with Josh, the different types of injuries, grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, we treat them accordingly. A simple strain, we ice it, put a hard shoe on, and sometimes you go back and play right away. Type 2, a little bit more conservative, wear a surgical shoe, possibly ice it. And type 3, almost a cast, where you got to let it rest, and really nothing to do but rest for it. Rest, ice, anti-inflammatories. The old, rice type of theory.
Yeah, right. All right. So turf toe. Our surfaces, everything went to AstroTurf, and now they're going back. There have been a lot of advancements in grass. Some of it isn't even natural grass, but there's some
It's
some
a mixture.
amazing.
They call it a hybrid now.
Yeah, and some amazing fields. I'll point to like Oxbridge Academy.
Right.
I mean, what phenomenal fields. That's the sort of stuff that maybe professional fields would have 10 years ago. That now we're seeing more commonplace and more mainstream. Do you think we're going to see will the type of turf toe injuries be reduced as a result of the advancements in some of the technology that field designers are using?
Most definitely, most definitely.
Because it's not stopping ACLs and all of the other things.
Well, ACLs, again, remember, we talked about that before. ACLs are not based on planting. ACLs occur while you're in the air and one part's going one way, the other's going the other way. So ACLs a lot of times 78% of the time actually, is a non-contact type of injury. Where turf toe is 100% of the time is due to because you're planting, hyperextending, tearing those ligaments, hard surfaces. Women who are wearing these, you probably go out to these bars still late at night, Steve, and see the women in 6-inch heels.
What?
Yeah.
Didn't even know they wear those.
Exactly. Anyway, and those two are a source of it. So the hard floors, the hard surfaces, definitely a cause of it. And as time goes on, people are getting more cognizant of the problems, and I think they will switch the fields.
Now let's talk about kids for a moment. When you were growing up and you were playing Little League, it was the old don't let them throw curveballs because they'll stunt their growth. Let's talk about kids and feet and foot injuries. What should parents be doing in general for kids right off the bat? You mentioned stretching earlier when we were talking about plantar fasciitis. What kind of consultation should go into the basic sneaker purchase decision? And then when there is foot pain for kids, how much can it have an impact on their future if they haven't completed their growth?
Well, I mean, when we talk about basic sports injuries, in order to prevent them, we try to do the stretching like we all know. We're all familiar with that. The basics are probably good enough for the average kids because the average kid's flexible, all right? It's the kid who's not the average kid who has the problems. Then we got to be a little bit more diligent about making sure he does the excessive stretching exercises. Let's go to shoes. Well, there's I won't mention name brands, but there are some shoes that are just not as supportive as others. By supportive, well, we don't want ones that are extremely flexible. Those are not going to give us support. They're going to bend and cause us to move more. We want one with more arch support. We want ones with where you're tying them. My kids, I'm sure, and my biggest problem with a lot of my patients, but especially my own kids, is they wear the slides, okay, which kills me. And these kids are going out playing basketball in their slides, which you're just looking for an accident to occur right there, an injury to occur. So
education's a big problem.
Education and parents overseeing their children and trying to get them. Your kids are still young, Steve, so you wait. But when your kid wants to come home and wear the fancy, pretty shoes, however, they're not the right one for him, then that's the debate. The debate of trying to teach your kids what's right, just like you're going to say what's right to eat, what's not right to eat, what's right to wear, what's not right to wear.
And if you were to tear ligaments or you were to have a bad sprain when you're 8, is that going to have a long-term impact on how your body or how your foot develops?
So let's just talk about that for 1 second, because I treat people a little bit differently than most. When I have a young athlete in my office who just sprained his ankle yesterday, the first thing I do is I get the swelling out by putting a compression bandage on, and I put him in a splint off of it. Why? Because once the ligaments are on this side of the ankle or this side. Once we tear it, we're possibly causing that ligament to be lengthened. Once we lengthen it, if the ligaments hold the two bones together, if it's not tight and a little bit longer, those bones are going to move more. We're going to sprain it again and again and again. So once you do one, you're going to do another. So I'm extremely aggressive with kids. I put them in a quick compression, a quick splint, followed by a cast for 2 weeks where that ankle doesn't move. After 2 weeks, the healing process has already occurred. I can let them out of it with ankle braces, start some aggressive physical therapy, and get them going from there. But it's so important, in my opinion, that the first 2 weeks of healing, that foot and ankle cannot move. It's got to be held tight together.
Wow. How about that, parents? Your kid gets injured and you're not sure what to do. It sounds like Dr. Cutler's preventative, probably extra conservative, or what you said, aggressive, meaning aggressive level of treatment.
To get them back on the field quickly. Yeah. That's the goal. The goal is, I got a young kid who's playing sports. He's got to go back playing that football game. I want him out for 3 weeks, not 6.
Right, so and it sounds like you take it to the level that even you'll hear like these professional athletes, and you'll hear they were walking around they were in a walking boot Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, practice Friday, and play on Sunday. It's just that level of precaution that can make that much of a difference to keep that ligament from stretching.
Well, we want to prevent these problems from happening when he's 40 years old. So he's 15 right now. He just sprained his ankle. He can go play. You can wrap it up really tight and play. But the problem is that going to happen again when he's 20, again when he's 25, again when he's 30, where it's going to develop arthritis in that joint and become a lifelong problem for the kid?
No, a couple of lessons today. You absolutely need to stretch. You need to be mindful of foot injuries because you're standing on your foot all the time. You got to recognize it's going to take longer for these injuries to heal, as you talked about with the turf toe. And when you experience something, or God forbid, one of your children experience something, the old just get back out there and tough it out is not necessarily is not the best solution, and it can have both short and sounds like some long-term impact. So South Florida Foot and Ankle is a leader in this community. WCFoot.com. For so many years, Dr. Cutler has been treating everything from, like you mentioned, from children to the weekend warriors, to some older folks that have experienced the problems that come with age as well, and been doing it and can do it for you as well. So check out WCFoot.com, the South Florida Foot and Ankle Centers, for Dr. John Cutler. Great show today, John.
Steve, great. Glad it was just you and me. We had fun as always.
We both actually got to talk.
Yeah, it was great. It was great.
All right, for Dr. Cutler, Steve Paul Sr., this has been the Injury Report at ESPNWestPalm.com.